This video is brought to you by AG1. Stick around to hear more about the special offer they're providing to the entire upper echelon community. All right, today is a topic I just really want to talk about for myself. I want to discuss this because I care deeply about Lord of the Rings, and to be completely honest, it was an important part of my childhood. I don't feel like I need to prove my credentials here or anything like that, but just to establish a sort of foundation, if you will, I have played pretty much every single Lord of the Rings video game in existence multiple times. I've played pretty much every themed board game I could ever get my hands on. I would even use the pieces from Lord of the Rings Risk and Stratego to play other games as if they were like army men and stuff when I was a kid. And I've read the books, the other books, the letters, and more. Lord of the Rings legitimately means something to me. And I even sunk, I don't even know how many hours into Lord of the Rings online, unlocking regions with the free-to-play currency I was painstakingly able to collect over time, farming every single achievement, and eventually grinding out PvP in the Etten Moors. It was called Creeps versus Freeps back then, and I'll never forget the raiding experience with huge PvP battles, especially when this guy named Rashkosh would get online, because every time he led the raid, we'd wipe the floor with them and basically push the Freeps all the way back out of the region for a day to do free questing with no ganks. Man, that was fun. That's where I learned how to play MMOs, actually. Target for target, DPS rotations, large-scale battles and tactics with wargs and hobbits scouting for ganking, etc., etc. I could say more, but the point is this. I have a deep, deep appreciation and love for Lord of the Rings. It is by far my favorite fantasy universe ever, for a lot of reasons. So when I see this right here, it kind of makes me upset. Amazon, for some ungodly reason, is now throwing shade at Lord of the Rings Online. I mean, not much shade, but it's there. After a failed MMO project of their own with Tencent, by the way, as they tease a new title from Amazon Game Studios, the people behind New World, where the mentality is, and I quote, "I definitely want to put the game first to make sure it's a great game, because as I said, we want people to play for 10 years, and it's not going to help me if someone is saying, that's a perfect representation of the book in a game. If you're really into that, read the book. Read it another 5 times. Otherwise, if it's a game has to do with playing, and they have to be playful, so there needs to be a little bit of being able to bend the rules to make it a great game." End quote. Just to really drill down here, right? Like that was, Amazon Game Studios Vice President something Hammer something? I don't know. I'll get to his name later on in the video. Just drilling down, that means that Amazon, after their first foray into the landscape of video game design with New World, and their most recent streaming series, Rings of Power, is going to make a Lord of the Rings MMO that is less tied to the books and seeks to differentiate itself from the original, largely faithful, nearly timeless, and beloved version of the MMO game. Great. All right, it's that time of the video where I advertise a product and try to keep all of you watching interested long enough to satisfy a corporate marketing department while simultaneously showing you the product itself, which is actually a pretty hard thing to do. This is AG1. It's an all-in-one foundational nutrition drink supporting immunity, which is great for athletes, and since the entire universe is, oh my god, it's floating on its own without me even touching the bag. The main thing that I did do was check the ingredients. What are they, how they interact with the human body, and I like what I found. Certified by the NSF, created for professional athletes, I've gained 3 entire IQ points just from sniff. I'm just kidding. Don't sniff it. It does smell good.
But you can't eat cats. You can't eat cats, Kevin.
The biggest thing I really do like is that AG1 contains particular ingredients such as alpha-lipoic acid and ashwagandha, which can help with sleep, stress, and particularly anxiety, because anxiety sucks and no one ever wants to have it. When all of this started, it was just another brand, another meaningless thing in an ocean of cluttered excess, but now I actually drink it, and I know of multiple other athletes I trust who also drink it as well. If you click the link down below, you can get a free year, 1 full year supply of immunosupporting vitamin D3K2, and 5 travel packs for free with your purchase. Again, link down below with a big bonus. Big thank you to AG1 for sponsoring the channel. Okay, with that out of the way, I need to ask a question of the audience right now, and this is just kind of like one of those off-script kind of heartfelt things to okay, just hear me out. Am I a toxic fan? I hear those words a lot now, especially in reference to things like Star Wars or Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, and I sit here wondering if I'm one of the people that they mean when they say that. Am I a toxic member of the fan base? Angry, malcontent, and judgmental? Or is it wrong to remember the books, love the lore, and appreciate a faithful adaptation of it in video game form? Is it wrong for me to think that Lord of the Rings Online, despite being pay to win and having very greedy monetization at times, is still a fundamentally good game because of its appreciation for the lore? I don't know. I'm not being an ass here. I want to know the answer. Am I one of those toxic fans that they talk about and obviously despise? Let me walk this through point by point. Amazon Game Studios currently has one MMO under their belt. Count them, one. New World. That game isn't bad, certainly not, but it had an extremely rocky start to say the very least. So bad, in fact, that the entire economy crashed multiple ways, multiple times, and the entire endgame content loop was just flat out broken. Sure, yes, fine, it got better. I'm sick of it now personally after hundreds of hours, but I did play hundreds of hours, well, many hundreds of hours, and I largely disagree with some of their choices in game, but it's an okay game by itself, so what's my problem? My problem is Rings of Power. Amazon Game Studios might have the capability of crafting something good, possibly as fresh IP, even if it was a disaster for a while at launch, but we're not talking about a brand new concept with shiny new lore where they have absolute freedom. We're talking about Lord of the Rings. All right, fine, so what? Well, lucky for us, unlucky for us, we do actually have an indication of how it can go when Amazon starts using established IP as well. Better yet, we can see firsthand how they used the Lord of the Rings IP and what they did with it for the purpose of a streaming series. To be clear, I don't really care what people want to say about Rings of Power from a personal perspective. You loved it because yay diversity, you hated it because holy shit they butchered the lore. Wow, the action sequences look real pretty because Amazon spent more money than any other show in human history, or anything in between, right? None of that matters. What does matter is that we have an objective reality in front of us that can be analyzed. Rings of Power was not faithful to established lore. You can like that, you can dislike that, doesn't matter to me. It's a fact. Actually, a fanfiction author is now suing over Rings of Power because his copyrighted fanfiction novel was allegedly stolen by someone, which he then asserts was the basis for the show. I don't care about this, but of course Amazon's billion-dollar tribute to the world of Tolkien is being sued for copying fanfiction. Even if it's not true, which I don't know, he definitely doesn't really have a case, but even if it's not true, that's just really fitting based on the quality of that show. Anyway, I don't have the capability to list all the different issues in play here. There's too many of them, but here are a few of the big ones. Rings of Power has rewritten foundational lore. Somehow, the light of the Silmarils is in Mithril and can save the elves from all dying. Galadriel is basically a genocidal warmonger. Pretty sure that Amazon doesn't actually have the licensing for some critical pieces of the lore or names to draw from and just made shit up to cover for it, while the dwarves woke up a Balrog in a way that made absolutely no sense. The writing doesn't track, the physics don't track, the character names are really messed up, and the plot lines contradict each other. People survive in impossible scenarios where entire bedrock foundations of why the books exist the way that they do stop making sense. I mean, like riding in from the wrong side because the sun's in the wrong location, or like the map and travel distances. I mean, I don't know. Rather than just railing about this for the next hour and a half, though, I'll summarize it like so. People are allowed to enjoy Rings of Power. Shocking for me, I know, but they are. I didn't, but people theoretically can. Someone who never cared about Lord of the Rings and doesn't understand how it's effectively an insult to the true spirit of the world, well, I envy them. They can enjoy something and move on afterward. But for me, Rings of Power stands as a glaring testament of not only Amazon's complete and utter failure when it comes to respect for the material, but also a box they have written themselves into, almost deliberately, I'd say, where I fully expect that the game will now kind of have to be used to explain, in air quotes there, some of these impossible things. They aren't just deviating from the lore, they are in the process of rewriting it such that true fans are completely alienated, and I'm finding it really hard to let go. Lord of the Rings Online is still popular, believe it or not, to this very day. Why? Because it attempted, right, holistically attempted, to capture the scope and feel of the world in a way that is really second only to the books themselves. Amazon, after demonstrating that they have, at bare minimum, trouble making MMO games as a fresh studio, has also demonstrated that they have no regard for the integrity of the lore in a television show right in front of our eyes, which they doubled down on multiple times. And we have to remember they were making a different MMO with Tencent of all people as recently as 2022 when it was suddenly canceled. Okay, so the partnership with Tencent fell through, thank God, and now they are partnered up with Embracer Group. That's better, I guess, but not much. And if we expand outward, yeah, the most recent Gollum game, which I was kind of hopeful for maybe, or maybe I'm just a naive moron who has too much faith in large companies to do anything other than bastardize the worlds that I love, is clearly a missed opportunity. And if I'm really being honest, pretty much all of the officially licensed Lord of the Rings content these days is just bad. Now, I don't want this to be too pessimistic, just me ruthlessly complaining with no upside, so here's a bit of a positive angle. Actually, here's an amazingly positive angle. Conquest Reimagined, Battle for Middle-earth Reforged, Kingdoms of Arda, and a whole bunch more. There's a bunch of different games that fall into this category. Mods for existing games, fan-made content for established titles, plus enormous amounts of passion and creativity from the community have resulted in solid, lore-based options for people who want to go find them. It takes a little bit of elbow grease to be sure, but there is quality Lord of the Rings content out there, including Lord of the Rings Online, where Amazon is sort of throwing shade, which stands the test of time, by the way, Lord of the Rings Online does, as a worthy and narratively engaging world. It's huge, by the way, overwhelmingly large in a good way, and players can absolutely lose themselves in passable combat. I mean, it's kind of sluggish and it's old, but passable combat, solid storytelling, very solid storytelling, and faithful lore for the most part, almost entirely, if they ever wanted to, for thousands and thousands of hours. But most of the quality content we have these days for Lord of the Rings is side projects built in the shadow of a property that could be so much more, but isn't. Amazon has the money to bring the property forward into the hands of a massive modern audience. That much is just undeniably true. They could be treating the lore with respect and attempting to do something that stays true to what the dedicated fans love, but they don't really seem to care. At least, not in my opinion, especially not if I consider the track record. It kind of reminds me how the Star Wars license got treated when it was under the yoke of EA for all those years, but I was never a diehard fan of Star Wars. I liked it, I appreciated the good stuff, but Lord of the Rings will always be where my true passion lies, and right now, the landscape is pretty bleak. I've actually been replaying the original Battle for Middle-earth a lot lately and watching a YouTuber named Beyond Standards. His content is amazing. I really wanted to shout him out here just because I personally enjoy his work a great deal, but why in the world is Amazon making programs like Rings of Power, which blatantly disrespect the old school fans, and then doubling down by effectively saying that the new MMO they are making, at least it won't be with Tencent this time, isn't going to stay as faithful to the books? One of the final things that has me sort of in disbelief is this from Amazon Game Studios Vice President Chris Hartman. There it is, that's his name. Quote, "It's done when it's done and when it's ready. That's it. I want that thing to be alive for 10 years plus. We're not going to ship something which is not ready." We're not going to ship something that's not ready. Obviously, we'd all like it to come as soon as possible out of personal interest, but we're only going to get it out when it's really ready to go. End quote. Yeah, okay. I appreciate the sentiment. I do. And I've seen what that sentiment really means in a lot of indie games before, like Falling Frontier, for example, where I have another indie spotlight coming out soon. I mean, that game is really only going to launch when it's fully ready. But bro, your studio launched New World, and that was the very definition of not ready. How are we supposed to have any confidence in this? To paraphrase one of my friends, Shino, here, who has a knack for getting things across rather bluntly and succinctly, I'm sure you're all very excited by the idea of New World all over again, but disregarding Tolkien at the same time. Yeah, that really sounds about right. I mean, that's the impression that I get. Honestly, there's nothing to be gained from this video. This is my own catharsis, really it is, as I come to terms with the fact that the fantasy world I loved the most growing up is now getting shit on by corporate brands for profit, and maybe I should just let go and wander off silently into the night, just move on, let my opinions fade away, but that's really hard for me. I love Lord of the Rings. I wish we could have more good games set in that world. Tons of them. And if anything good might come of this video, possibly, I hope it's this. Dear Amazon, please don't fuck this up and make something terrible just because you think that you can write it better than Tolkien did. You can't. Please don't launch the game in an unfinished state where the entire endgame content loop is broken for months after pretending that you are going to do justice to the subject matter. New World. Please understand why the old school fans appreciate the original game and also recognize that you have a veritable army of supporters just waiting, watching, ready to come in to flood in and buy your product if you make even a slightly passable effort to appease and cater to them. Do you think it's wrong, Amazon, to build content for the old school fans nowadays? Does everything in modern entertainment need to subvert expectations? Or can we find some sort of middle ground here where you do actually launch a game that's ready and you don't rewrite portions of a childhood memory in ways that make no sense? And I don't know. In the end, I want to be hopeful because I love Lord of the Rings, but maybe part of getting older is recognizing that the things you love get taken and twisted and turned into ever worsening versions of themselves because of what? Profit? Message? I don't know. I hope it ends up being good. All in all, I view Lord of the Rings to be one of the greatest ongoing, sequentially worsening missed opportunities in all of entertainment. We could have so much great content from that world, an unbelievable amount. But no, we can't because of unknown people in lofty corporate rooms making terrible decisions who are holistically out of touch with what made the content special to begin with. Me, I'll be down here waiting for and extensively playing community made mods, complaining on YouTube to anyone who will listen to me because I'm a bitter old man in a young person's body who wants the world to go back to how it was when I grew up, at least for Lord of the Rings. Hope you enjoyed the video. Links down below to support, merchandise, social media, the video sponsor. They've actually been pretty great to me, by the way, so if you are at all interested in their product, please do make sure to use the link down below and support me and the sponsor at the exact same time. Also, a comprehensive list of cybersecurity options for anyone else who's concerned about protecting themselves online. That's an ongoing project. And monthly subscriptions like Patreon or Locals, etc. But yeah, today was just me telling you how I feel about a topic that I care deeply about, so that's it. Thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.